So we are still cycle 2. We had 2 pages. We made another video for the first page. Now we are doing the exercise page. So the left things to be done. For example, show that video, the video where I explain exercises to your students. Then create a checklist of exercises. What do I mean by that? So every student is supposed to know what you expect him to do. So typically teachers at that stage will create a checklist with the sequence of exercise to be done, and maybe it's just references to the school book, as explained in the video above. So that checklist exists. When that checklist exists, when you've done that, you check as a teacher. The solutions to these exercises are available within the classroom and not just in the teacher's head. So it's possible to look at the solution without taking time from the teacher. You check. A queuing system makes it possible to wait for the teacher's availability. You mean you can ask the teacher, you can tell the teacher you're waiting for him without stopping your work and without fearing to lose your turn. That another student later asking the teacher will see the teacher before you do. If you enforce such a system, you check, even if it doesn't work. That's the process, the objectives are on the right side. So on the left side still, you exploit the space. Maybe it's not only a classroom. In many schools, I encourage the teacher, with the agreement of the management, of course, to exploit, for example, the hallway. For example, to have short stand-up meetings in the hallway for students explaining each other, for example. Or on the contrary, to have a few desks in the hallway, even if you put the desks back every hour into the classroom when you switch teachers. Just having a few desks in the hallway, which could be the silent zone too, for students taking an assessment or students. Okay, but everything is explained somewhere else. So when you feel you exploit the space, you talked about it, you check. Do you have timers when two students ask, can we explain with each other? And you say, yes, but 5 minutes only. They should have a timer, or you should have a timer to manage that. And after 5 minutes, you remind them, now it's over, so they don't lose time talking about holidays, for example. So do you have such timers and use them? Yes, click, check. Encourage students not to start with the same exercise. If all students start with the first one in the checklist, then if they have a question, they always ask the question at the same time. But if you have one student doing all the exercise in the reverse order, for example, every time later some student has a question about exercise 10, he may ask that student because he would have done exercise 10 a long time ago. So if your students don't do the same exercises at the same time, it's much easier to have cross mutual aid within students. So next one is that you are like an orchestra conductor. You don't stay with one student for 5 minutes. You cannot stop and explain a student for 5 minutes if other students need you. But usually, especially if you are a beginner with this posture change, you should try to delegate as much as possible. And maybe you spend 10 seconds on a student and then you give him some pointers to get help somewhere else or in the book or I don't know. And then you go back watching the whole class. That's quite difficult to do for some teachers, especially if you like to talk once you start talking with a student. So please, students, don't hesitate to remind the teacher. Don't spend too much time on me. I get it. What you try to tell me, please don't forget about my teammates. They might need you. So communicate to parents. Um, you what students could not do in the class because they were too slow. You think they had enough time to do all the exercises, but maybe they were slow because they have gaps from past year, and they don't have the fundamentals right, and so they are slow, or maybe just more typical because they didn't put so much energy in doing your exercises within the classroom. Maybe they talk with each other, um, losing time on that and not explaining, but just talking about holidays and so on. No, 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 no. If the work is not done in class, it should be given as homework, and you should communicate efficiently with parents what homework has to be done, what has not been done in the class. So communicates to parents what homework to do, what has not been done in the class, or something like that. Delegate the application of work climate. I would say the enforcement of the work climate to students. So you'd like your class to work hard during this exercise time, maybe for 20 minutes. It might be long for some to focus 20 minutes. So you need somebody to enforce that work climate. To start, it will be you. It will be you. And as I told you, you try not to stay too much time on a specific student. So you delegate, you have two assistants. Um, Later, you will have two assistants trained to enforce that. And you shouldn't, and then you could spend more time on a specific student. You, as a teacher, should whisper when you speak to a few students, to less than a quarter of the class, for example. You said that as an example. Okay, so that's what you do in the process. What you achieve as objectives. First, you pass the test of this cycle. So cycle 2, exercises here. Objective. You have to write a letter. So all to your teacher, and you, the teacher, you may write a letter to another teacher or to a teacher when you were a child, or to your headmaster, your choice. But when it's done, you check here as a teacher, or students are done, they check here. So you have a predictive work climate, which is not too noisy. Everyone has an explanation when they ask for it. And if they need an explanation but they don't ask, you should be there, remember, to detect that, and you see what they need. When students explain to each other, it's brief and efficient. They don't lose time in talking about Netflix or any other non-academic stuff. Most of the exercises are corrected by delegated students. You are not going to check every exercise, every answer that students provide to the exercises. You at least first you'd like other students to look if it's good, and maybe it's not perfect, and they tell it to the students doing the exercise, and the students doing the exercise will redo maybe the exercise or improve the exercise before you see the final result. The students are pilot of the sequencing. I mean, they can choose. I prefer to start with exercise 4 instead of exercise 1, for example. Students really do the exercise. They don't pretend to do it. They don't fake. They don't just copy the answers you provide, because remember, you have the solutions available in the class, or they might copy from a teammate. So when this does not happen, so when they really do the exercise, you can check here if you feel that as a teacher, and as students, if you think you mostly really do the exercises, you check here. When you as a student, you stuck on something, you need the teacher. For example, the teacher is not available. You have something else to do. You have multiple things to do. For example, on that list of exercises, you can do another exercises. You pose the problem task, you do something else, and when the teacher is available again, you can unblock you on this task. So when you feel that's achieved, you check. Students are able to change the configuration of the benches in of the tables of the desks in 30 minutes. So in 30 seconds, sorry. So with some training, maybe you need to do that as a group 5, 6 times before you reach that. But for example, having a U shape with the desks, or having a front configuration, a classic configuration, or having all the desks against the walls, facing the walls. Are you able as a group to do that, to make the change very quickly and without having a messy, noisy, because you need not to disturb other teachers from other classrooms. You need to do that efficiently and quietly, but with energy. Can you, as a teacher, get out of the class, close the door, and they are still working for a few minutes, maybe for 10, even 20 minutes? Do not forget about your assistants. Maybe you cannot, and you don't check, but if you can, it's a great achievement. Please check. So most students finish on time in the class, and so they have no homework. Remember, communicate with the parents about the homeworks. So when there is no homework because you finished on time, and most students do that, that's also a good achievement. Then you check, and at the end, the headmaster sees that in the class, signs, and maybe all other students may sign the sheet too. It's displayed on the wall. Be proud of what you achieved, because that's a big one. That's a very important step. When you achieve this, you're really ready for cycle 3, which is more like easier stuff. Yeah, that's one main piece of the transition. Good luck with that and enjoy it.